Hello and welcome to day 57 of the Not Alone Today chronological Bible reading plan with Joseph and Anu. Today we are in Deuteronomy chapter 16 from verse 18 all the way to chapter 21 verse 23. Deuteronomy 16 from verse 18 all the way to the end of chapter 21, which is verse 23. This week we are in the English Standard Version, the ESV.
Chapter 16, verse 18. You shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice, you shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the course of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you.
You shall not plant any tree as an Asherah beside the altar of the Lord your God that you shall make, and you shall not set up a pillar which the Lord your God hates.
Chapter 17. You shall not sacrifice to the Lord your God an ox or a sheep in which is a blemish, any defect whatever, for that is an abomination to the Lord your God.
If there is found among you within any of your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, a man or woman who does what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, in transgressing his covenant, and has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun or the moon or any of the host of heaven, which I have forbidden, and it is told you and you hear of it, then you shall inquire diligently, and if it is true and certain that such an abomination has been done in Israel, then you shall bring out to your gates that man or woman who has done this evil thing, and you shall stone that man or woman to death with stones, on the evidence of 2 witnesses, or of 3 witnesses. The one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. You shall purge the evil from your midst.
If any case arises requiring decision between one kind of homicide and another, one kind of legal right and another, or one kind of assault and another, any case within your towns that is too difficult for you, then you shall arise and go up to the place that the Lord your God will choose. And you shall come to the Levitical priest and to the judge who is in the office in those days, and you shall consult them, and they shall declare to you the decision. Then you shall do according to what they declare to you from that place that the Lord will choose. And you shall be careful to do according to all that they direct you, according to the instructions that they give you, and according to the decision which they pronounce to you, you shall do. You shall not turn aside from the verdicts that they declare to you, either to the right hand or to the left. The man who acts presumptuously by not obeying the priest who stands to minister there before the Lord your God, or the judge, that man shall die. So you shall purge the evil from Israel, and all the people shall hear and fear and not act presumptuously again.
When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. You may indeed set a king over you, whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. Since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. And when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priests, and it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes, and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandments either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel.
Chapter 18. The Levitical priests and all the tribe of Levi shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. They shall eat the Lord's food offerings as their inheritance. They shall have no inheritance among their brothers. The Lord is their inheritance, as he promised them. And this shall be the priest's due from the people, from those offering a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep. They shall give to the priest the shoulder, and the 2 cheeks, and the stomach, the first fruits of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the first fleece of your sheep you shall give him. For the Lord your God has chosen him out of all your tribes, to stand and minister in the name of the Lord, him and his sons for all time.
And if a Levite comes from any of your towns out of all Israel, where he lives, and he may come when he desires, to the place that the Lord will choose, and ministers in the name of the Lord his God, like all his fellow Levites who stand to minister there before the Lord, then he may have equal portions to eat, besides what he receives from the sale of his patrimony.
When you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination, or tells fortunes, or interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a medium, or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. For whoever does those things is an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out before you. You shall be blameless before the Lord your God. For these nations, which you are about to dispossess, listen to fortune tellers and to diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do this.
The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your brothers. It is to him you shall listen, just as you desired of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, "Let me not hear again the voice of the Lord my God, or see this great fire any more, lest I die." And the Lord said to me, "They are right in what they have spoken. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And whoever will not listen to my words that he shall speak in my name, I myself will require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, how may we know the word that the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him.
Chapter 19. When the Lord your God cuts off the nations whose land the Lord your God is giving you, and you dispossess them, and dwell in their cities and in their houses, you shall set apart 3 cities for yourselves in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. You shall measure the distances and divide into 3 parts the area of the land that the Lord your God gives you as a possession, so that any manslayer can flee to them. You shall measure the distances and divide into 3 parts the area of the land that the Lord your God gives you as a possession, so that any manslayer can flee to them.
This is the provision for the manslayer, who by fleeing there may save his life. If anyone kills his neighbor unintentionally without having hated him in the past, as when someone goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down a tree, and the head slips from the handle and strikes his neighbor so that he dies, he may flee to one of these cities and live, lest the avenger of blood in hot anger pursue the manslayer and overtake him, because the way is long and strike him fatally, though the man did not deserve to die, since he had not hated his neighbor in the past. Therefore I command you, you shall set apart 3 cities. If the Lord your God enlarges your territory as he has sworn to your fathers and gives you all the land that he has promised to give to your fathers, provided you are careful to keep all his commandments, which I command you today, by loving the Lord your God and by walking ever in his ways. Then you shall add 3 other cities to these 3, lest innocent blood be shed in your land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance, and so the guilt of bloodshed be upon you.
But if anyone hates his neighbor and lies in wait for him and attacks him and strikes him fatally so that he dies, and he flees into one of these cities, then the elders of the city shall send and take him from there and hand him over to the avenger of blood so that he may die. Your eyes shall not pity him, but you shall purge the guilt of innocent blood from Israel, so that it may be well with you.
You shall not move your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set, in the inheritance that you will hold in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess.
A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime, or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses shall a charge be established. If a malicious witness arises to accuse a person of wrongdoing, then both parties to the dispute shall appear before the Lord, before the priests and the judges who are in the office in those days. The judges shall inquire diligently, and if the witness is a false witness and has accused his brother falsely, then he shall do to him as he had meant to do to his brother. So he shall purge the evil from your midst, and the rest shall hear and fear, and they shall never again commit any such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, it shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot.
Chapter 20. When you go out to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army larger than your own, you shall not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And when you draw near to the battle, the priest shall come forward and speak to the people, and shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are drawing near for battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Do not fear or panic or be in dread of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to give you the victory. Then the officers shall speak to the people, saying, Is there any man who has built a new house and has not dedicated it? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man dedicate it. And is there any man who has planted a vineyard and has not enjoyed its fruits? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man enjoy its fruits. And is there any man who has betrothed a wife and has not taken her? Let him go back to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her. And the officers shall speak further to the people and say, Is there any man who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go back to his house, lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. And when the officers have finished speaking to the people, then commanders shall be appointed at the head of the people.
When you draw near to a city to fight against it, offer terms of peace to it. And if it responds to you peaceably, and it opens to you, then all the people who are found in it shall do forced labor for you and shall serve you. But if it makes no peace with you and makes war against you, then you shall besiege it. And when the Lord your God gives it into your hand, you shall put all its males to the sword, but the women and the little ones, the livestock and everything else in the city, all its spoil, you shall take as plunder for yourselves. And you shall enjoy the spoil of your enemies, which the Lord your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very far from you, which are not cities of the nations here. But in the cities of this people that the Lord your God has given you for an inheritance, you shall save alive nothing that breathes, but you shall devote them to complete destruction. The Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, just as the Lord your God has commanded, that they may not teach you to do according to the abominable practices that they have done for their gods, and so you sin against the Lord your God.
When you besiege a city for a long time, making war against it in order to take it, You shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them. You may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Are the trees in the field human, that they should be besieged by you? Only the trees that you know are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down, that you may build siege works against the city that makes war with you until it falls.
Chapter 21. If in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess, someone is found slain, lying in the open country, and it is not known who killed them, then the elders and your judges shall come out, and they shall measure the distance to the surrounding cities. And the elders of the city that is nearest to the slain man shall take a heifer that has never been worked, and that has not pulled in a yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a valley with running water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. Then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come forward, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him, and to bless in the name of the Lord your God, and by their word every dispute and every assault shall be settled. And all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley, and they shall testify, our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see it shed. Accept atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not set the guilt of the innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel, so that their blood guilt be atoned for. So you shall purge the guilt of the innocent blood from your midst, when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord.
When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God gives them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you desire to take her to be your wife, and you bring her home to your house, she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall take off the clothes in which she was captured, and shall remain in your house and lament her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go in to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. But if you no longer delight in her, you shall let her go where she wants. But you shall not sell her for money, nor shall you treat her as a slave, since you have humiliated her.
If a man has two wives, the one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him children, and if the firstborn son belongs to the unloved, then on the day when he assigns his possessions as an inheritance to his sons, he may not treat the son of the loved as the firstborn in preference to the son of the unloved, who is the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the unloved, by giving him a double portion of all he has, for he is the first fruits of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his.
If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city at the gate of the place where he lives. And they shall say to the elders of his city, this our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear.
And if a man has committed a crime punishable by death, and he is put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night on the tree, but you shall bury him the same day, for a hanged man is cursed by God. You shall not defile your land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. By way of quick recap, we concluded chapter 16, that's from verse 18 to 22, in which we saw the plan to appoint judges and to ensure that there is no partiality that is shown in their judgments. And then from verse 21 of chapter 16 all the way into chapter 17, we begin to see various forbidden forms of worship when they get into the promised land. And then we also saw in that chapter 17 some legal decisions by priests and judges and the procedures for that. There was some laws that were spelled out concerning Israel's future kings, when they will begin to have kings, what the kings should do and what they shouldn't do. In chapter 18, the provision for priests and Levites was spelled out again. Some abominable practices that they should avoid when they come into the promised land was highlighted. And then Moses spoke of a prophet that will be like himself, that God will raise for the people in the future, whom they should listen to. In chapter 19, we saw laws concerning the cities of refuge, which is again being reiterated. He has said it before. Likewise, instructions about property boundaries, laws concerning witnesses, that there should be more than one witness, 2 or 3, before a case is judged. And then in chapter 20, there were laws concerning warfare when they are going to battle, what needs to happen before and what needs to happen after. And then lastly, in chapter 21, we saw the atonement process for unsolved murders, and then instructions about marrying female captives that have been taken from battle. An inheritance right of the firstborn was spelled out. There is also this curious instruction or sets of instruction about a rebellious son that should be stoned to death on the report of his father and mother. Lastly, instructions about someone that has been put to death by hanging them on a tree, how that their body must not remain all night on the tree, but they must be buried immediately the same day. That's the quick summary of all the chapters that we have gone through.
Yeah. So in chapter 17, verses we read, what stood out to me was how that when a verdict has been given by the priests or judges, it's legal and you cannot turn from it. And that's verse 11. And then I was very curious about, in verse 14, God already anticipated what the Israelites would clamor for and made provisions for that king. But when, I'm sure I'm reading ahead, we're not there yet, but when Saul was made king, nowhere did I see him sitting at his throne and reading a copy of the law. Yeah, that's interesting. That God already foresaw what will happen, what the complaint would be, and then help them to see what should be done in such a situation. That's quite, I don't know, all-encompassing for me, just to know that is a God who sees us. It's a God who sees and knows everything. So
indeed. I mean, that was one of the major standout points for me as well in chapter 17. And I noted how, just looking at the first 3 kings of Israel, Saul, David, Solomon, within those 3, many of these laws were already broken. He said they should not have many wives for himself.
That is Solomon.
By the time we get to Solomon, we're not just talking of a few wives, and in fact, many would not qualify. Maybe very many would be the word. And likewise, his father David, as much as we know it from the record in the scripture, he would probably have like 7 different wives. So that's quite instructive. I find interesting the command for the king to actually write a copy of the law by themselves. It's more or less of saying you are writing out Genesis to Deuteronomy by hand. Of course, these were long before the days of printing presses. And you had to write it as your own personal copy that you can then continue to read. And indeed, if a king would do that, then it goes without saying that apart from the fact that you'll be well informed to make wise decisions, you would also have this awe and respect for God, such as we did not fully see. I mean, David was the one that was closest to that amongst those first 3, but even him failed in many regards. When they attempted to bring the Ark of the Covenant the first time and Uzzah died when the thing stumbled, it was going back to the law that redeemed the situation. Now they saw, okay, it shouldn't have been carried by carts. It should have been carried with poles by the appointed tribe. So those are the kind of things that having the law as the leader or the instructions, the word of God, the will of God, the counsel of God will guide us in making such decisions. Chapter 18, anything stood out to you?
Just how about just verse 13 where God said they should be blameless before him and not listen to fortune tellers and diviners. And what really struck me in this verse is that it applies to people, it applies to us immigrants, you see. However, sometimes when we come to a new country and we settle there, in order to integrate, we sometimes lose ourselves in the process. And it's quite subtle, because if he's saying fortune tellers and to diviners, these are people who will tell you what the future is. They're not really bad in a sense, but they're people who help you anticipate your future. And there are things in the countries that we are in that helps us anticipate this future so much that it takes us away from the leading of the Holy Spirit to rely heavily on these fortune tellers, the AIs, the Geminis of our world, the Claudes. It's not even just for immigrants, even people who are living in their country of birth. It applies in that we are starting to attribute what God should own to these efficient, super fast machines. And so when I was reading this and I read, and that just stood out to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is really important. If I read the verse out, it says, "You shall be blameless before the Lord your God. For these nations which you are about to dispossess, listen to fortune tellers and to diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do this." And it brings to mind that 1 Corinthians 6:12 that says that all things, I'm paraphrasing, might be permissible for us. Like we can do anything basically. But not all of them are beneficial. And that we should not be mastered by these things. And it kind of fits neatly into what God is trying to say, what God is saying here to the Israelites, that they are not allowed to do these things. Just because these resources are available and people are posting prompts on social media that it's making life easy, fine, it's good for us to be aware of its usage, but then to set boundaries so that we do not cross that line where instead of praying for a solution about a thing, the first thing that comes to our mind is to turn to Gemini or turn to Claude or ChatGTP for solutions, thereby taking the place of prayers. Even sometimes our studying of the Bible is quite, we want to make it more efficient by turning to these resources. And for me, it brings a concern to my heart. I'm sure my husband would nuance it well. It does concern me if we can't study the Bible on our own, but need to consult these resources for it to break it down so we can then take the juice of it. But there's also the beauty of chewing an apple, the fruit itself. That's it makes it different from actually drinking apple juice. When you drink apple juice, it goes straight into your bloodstream, isn't it? The pure sugar. But when you chew an apple, just the act of the crunch and the chewing, it adds up to the fulfillment of when it then lands in your belly. Indeed. So by the time you finish one apple fruit, there's a satisfaction to it. But when you finish and
your teeth are stronger.
It's so stronger. But when you finish a bottle of juice, in the next 20 minutes, you're hungry again. And it leads to our studying of the Bible, the chewing, the mundane act of just looking at the actual words for yourself and consulting maybe, a concordance or the Greek version. What was said? It's beautiful, in my opinion, than to then go and get a condensed mode, like the juice of it, just so you can quickly drink and then move on to something else. So that's what stood out to me in that verse.
Interesting. The aspects that came to mind from that immigration-specific application of that verse, especially regarding fortune tellers and to diviners, is, for those of us living in the diaspora, living in all these countries in the Western world where different laws keep coming up around how you get to stay in the country, what needs to happen, how long you need to have been in the country because you can have before you can have XYZ and things like that. All of those laws and policies, even when they are still white papers or still deliberations in the House of Parliament or in the government's policy space, as it were, can begin to bring fear into people's hearts and minds. And when we get to chapter 19, the issue of fear is also part of what stood out to me, which I'll still talk about. But listening to what God has said is what should be the news cycle should not be your fortune teller. It's not, the news does not tell you your future.
True.
Our steps are ordered by God. He's got the whole world in his hands, and he leads us to dwell in the places he wants us to dwell in tandem with his providential will. And we just need to continue to lean into that and to work with that. I like your reflection on it, linking that with especially artificial intelligence for this generation. And indeed, there is always that tension between the advancement that we are seeing both in technology and now that can be applied and best managed, best stewarded is the word, for even the growth in our spiritual life. Once upon a time, there were no physical Bibles. All you could have was scrolls. And for as long as that was the case, that limited naturally engagement with the Bible to only people that are knowledgeable enough to have scrolls and to understand it, because more often than not it's written in a language that is not their language. And then the printing press came in the 16th century and Bibles became a thing in different languages. And between then and now, we've had physical Bibles and all of these, versions and languages, and that continues to boom. And because that carried on for a long time, again, there's the tendency to always take that as the norm, as the standard. And then Bible apps begin to pop up in the last 20, 30 years. And of course, again, that's changed the dynamic of things. It made the Bible more and more and more accessible to more and more and more people that probably would even not own a physical Bible. And there is that tension at that point. There is a lot of wisdom in having a physical Bible, especially because that is what we have known for 200, 300, 400 years. But now the technology has moved on to a point where you can have these apps on tablets and on browsers and things like that. The point in all of this is what you've rightly said about stewarding it with boundaries, knowing that the juice of it is not so much in the commentaries, in the study Bibles, and all of these are very important and very useful. And I think AI has brought another level to that, in which case, indeed, if stewarded well, what you would get from 17 different commentaries and many hours of study, you can get it simply within the click of few buttons. However, the muscles that should be developed in the process of going to hunt for those resources for yourself and engaging is just like, even when you're studying academically, if you're writing a paper and you are researching this book, this stamp paper, this essay, this journal article, this chapter, and you're going into them, even if it is few paragraphs that you are getting to read from them, sometimes you see things that takes you out of what you are wanting to study, but your knowledge base is increasing. You are building muscles that you wouldn't build otherwise. And so one of the big pitfalls I already see as a huge red flag is that the time is coming, and the Bible will say, and the time is now, when, we'll have a generation of kids or grandkids that can't even think in terms of just normal, everyday thinking processes that we do. Because now we don't have to do many of those thinkings again if we just keep turning to all these tools and resources. So there is a need to have that balance, and that balance comes with boundaries, just to knowing that indeed the fact that something is available is not justification enough to make that our go-to and as a replacement for who should always be our source, namely God in us, the Holy Spirit, in that sense. So thank you that's instructive to me, by the way, personally, as much as it is instructive to many other people. We are all working towards it. God help us.
Amen.
Chapter 19, Did anything stand out to you?
In chapter 19, it reminded me of what we've read before. I'm not sure which chapter, but where they said that 3 cities should be set apart, and that anyone who kills someone unintentionally can run there to save their lives. And that stood out to me, because when I was reading, I thought, it's interesting that God will be repeating it there.
Yeah.
And the last part that stood out to me was verse 21, where God said, "Your eye shall not pity. It shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot."
Yeah.
Especially for a person who has done wrong, and the charge has been established by 2 or 3 witnesses.
Yeah. When I read that, I had to pause again and be like, oh, okay, so this is the context. Because I remember when Jesus was saying, "You have heard that which was said by Moses, an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth." I didn't fully get the context. Of course, I understand what he is saying, and I will go on to say you should love your enemy, bless them that curse you, and things like that. So yeah, to just see that was the standard in the Old Testament is quite interesting. But yeah, it's quite, you can't read these laws and not be indeed in awe of wanting to just keep in line with God. I don't want to jump a chapter ahead, but I would have jumped straight from here to 21 to make a connection, and maybe I should, then we'll come back to 20. With when he said that parents of rebellious children, if you have a rebellious son, daddy and mommy will come together, take the rebellious son and take him to the elders at the gate and say, "Our son is rebellious," and then you stone him to death. Like, I just can't, I don't have a category to file that under. But how gracious and how loving is our God, to the point where he did all this, as Paul will help us to understand, that the law is a schoolmaster. He wants to teach us, this is how holy I am. And this is how detestable such things that we easily take for granted now are before God. But thanks be to God, because indeed, to continue to live under this kind of laws, the question becomes, who shall stand? If God begins to, quote and unquote, mark sin, as the scripture would later say, and in this narrative as we go on, who can stand? I've been rebellious at some point in my life. Thankfully, my parents did not take me to the elders to stone me. But yeah, it just reminds you how holy and how perfect God is, and thanks be to him for living in us to continue to become more like him in all of these areas.
Yes, thank you.
Chapter 20.
And chapter 20, what I found very, very curious is how God said in 19 to 20 that he should not cut down a tree.
Yeah.
In the land they conquer.
Yeah. I
was going to make a note to go study later, like, why though?
It did give them a rationale for that law in that same context. On the one hand, and of course, this is because you are besieging a city, so you are trying to mount pressure on this city that has been maybe fenced around and all that, and you need all these things to do that. But I like that he said that in doing that, in cutting all these trees to make a siege, you still need to eat. So why would you cut down so it's basically saying it's not outrightly don't cut down trees. You can cut it if you are sure that, they are not trees for food. It says in verse 20, only the trees that are not trees for food you may destroy and cut down. But that you may build your siege works. But if it is a tree that will give fruit, why cut it down? You feed from it. And he said, because the tree has not offended you. He said, are the trees in the field human that they should be besieged by you? They are not your enemy. But I think it's more instructive to the whole climate change conversation, deforestation, afforestation, reforestation, to just know that really there is a balance in the universe that God has created, that we also want to continue to play a part in stewarding well. And cutting trees recklessly does not do that. there is a part they play in the grand scheme of things in oxygen and carbon dioxide balance. Speaking in layman terms from the limited knowledge I have about it. But yeah, that's quite interesting. What I found more interesting in chapter 20 is actually the instructions about going to battle and the things that the priest has to say to the people. It reminds me of the story that we still see in Judges when Gideon was going to go to battle. Started from, I think, 42,000 people, ended with only 300 people actually going, and they won. But the priest will ask them questions. You know, if you have a house, a new house, and you are sure you still want to go and dedicate it, please go. If you have a wife that you've betrothed, you've not fully married, go and marry them. Don't go to battle because you will go to battle and die. And you know, all these things. It's almost like trying to say to them, if you have any reason whatsoever that you're feeling, hey, should I be there? Should I not be there? Just don't go. But all these questions are coming after it has first of all been said that the Lord your God is the one going to fight for you against your enemies to give you the victory. So in spite of the word that has gone ahead, there is still the place of the just shall live by his own faith. Yes, God is going to go with you, and you've seen it in the track record of what he has done up until this point. But if your faith is still not carrying it, why go and fight a battle that you are not ready for? Is what basically that is saying. And after the priest has said his own, then the officers shall also speak further and literally just break it down and ask, is any of you fearful and faint-hearted? If you are, go back to your house. Because fear is contagious. It says, lest he make the heart of his fellows melt like his own. And that's the juice for me. That fear is contagious. Just as much as faith can inspire faith in others, fear can inspire fear in others. And we want to be careful that we are surrounded with faith-filled people, not fear-filled people. Yeah.
Chapter 21. What stood out to me and made me feel a bit sad is when the female captive is being married. On the first hand, I understand God's plan. I shouldn't say my human self, but yeah. The plan is that a woman they go fight, and the woman is taken as part of the plunder. And one of the Israelites is meant to marry her. But I like how that at least they will leave her alone for 1 month. To grieve the people she's lost. And then the man would come in and consummate the marriage. But then I thought, and then the part that says that if the man no longer delights in her, he should let her go. A part of me is reading it like, after consummation. But another part of me is saying this is actually merciful. Like she's not bound to a man who doesn't love her. And I like how that God said he must not sell her as a slave or sell her for money because he has humiliated her. So God knew that the action of the man is humiliating for her. And has made provision like, okay, fine, you've done your bit, but let her go. Let her gain her freedom or dependence. But then I'm not quite sure what security she would have if she's just on her own, like a lone woman in a strange land. Or what happened to her? I'm sure there'll be a law or something that
we've seen again and
again. For foreigners,
different laws too.
That caters for them. Maybe that's why God kept saying that you shall treat the foreigners among you the same way you treat yourself. Because remember, you were once slaves in Egypt. Now I don't feel sad.
And then, of course, Jesus would eventually bring a full balance by the time we get to the New Testament on this to say, in the beginning it was not so. Many of the things Moses gave them in these instructions, of course, which he received from God about marriage. And I think there was a specific case where Jesus is saying, Moses said you can, divorce a woman and just give her a certificate of divorce. Like, I don't want you again, just carry your things and go. But it's becoming clearer from what we have read now that, Jesus said, in the beginning it was not so. This is not God's full plan. Compared to the world of the ancient Near East where they are possessing, what we have read here is by far more righteous than any way other people in other nations will treat captives. They treat them indeed as properties and dispossess of them anyhow. They rape them, they do all these things. God is saying here, number one, let her grieve. That's dignifying. And if indeed you discover that you don't like her again, let her go, but make her absolutely free. Again, that's very merciful, as you rightly said, compared to how it would be in the other nations around them that they must not emulate. But even these merciful, things in the law, in the way it is spelled out, is not God's perfect plan, especially when it comes to marriage. It's a man and his wife, and the two shall become one. And Jesus will go on to reiterate that.
We hope this has blessed you as it has blessed us, this reading and discussion.
Thank you very much for joining us. We'll flip the page on day 58 as we continue in the journey. Till then, just remember,
you're not alone
today. God bless you.